Hi, Rowan. How are you doing?
Yeah, I'm good, thanks. So lovely to see you.
You too, you too. I'm very, very, very happy that you're joining us today because I think it's really, really interesting for young people not just to hear from musicians, but also people who help organize us, right, and put us in the right places.
Do our best. Yeah.
So before we get into a bit more about who you are, and what you do, I have a couple of questions just so people can get to know another side of you. Right? So, who or what is your favorite sport, and could you tell us, if you can, your favorite team that you support?
So my favourite sport currently is a new game that my toddler has made, which involves trying to get a very tiny ping pong ball into a cup, which he puts underneath one of our outdoor chairs. And as far as I can work out, this is a sort of a long form game that can take anywhere from between 2 minutes to about 4 hours, depending on how he's feeling. No one ever wins except him. And the rules change all of the time. So you're really, really kept on your toes. And at any moment, the chief player and referee, both of which are him, can take a thick peek and run inside and not want to talk to anybody for half an hour. So you never quite know what's going to come at you. But it's a very entertaining game. And sometimes I feel like the champion of the world, and sometimes I feel like a complete failure. So it's yeah, that's my current summer jam.
Amazing. Coming to ESPN or BBC Sports
Yeah,
soon.
exactly. It would be a long watch. I think we'd have to. I think probably the only way to do it is if we got toddlers as commentators as well. That's and
That would be
pundits.
pretty
That
interesting.
would be the best way.
That would
Yeah,
be pretty
I
cool.
think there's a future in it.
Quick one. What's your favorite food?
Any food that someone else has made for me with love, I will happily take that on. It's my yeah.
And finally, where's a place that you'd love to live?
So I worked for a long time in Suffolk, across Suffolk and South Norfolk, and I think that Suffolk is just the most beautiful county, and it's full of fascinating people and places. And um, I think Ipswich is a really interesting town, and I love the combination of the coast and the fields and the farms, and just everything about it is just a glorious, glorious place. So it's not far flung, it's not Hawaii or anywhere, tropical or exciting like that, but it just feels like the place that when I really think about where I could lay my head, it would be Suffolk.
I think just in case there are some people out there who don't know what Suffolk is, if you look at the map of England, that's like on the right, that hump, just on the right hand side of England. It's just there. So
Yeah, it's sort of East Anglia, the big bit sticking out the side.
that's it. All right. So your job, what you do, right? So you are a CEO. So could you tell us a bit about what that means? What does it mean to be CEO of an orchestra?
Okay. So it's always funny when people ask me what I do for my job, because because the immediate answer is to give your job title. So you say, "Oh, I'm a CEO," and that is three letters, by the way. We sort of say it really quickly, but it's CEO, which is an acronym, right? And so what those letters stand for, a Chief Executive Officer. Which again doesn't really explain anything. So, what that means ultimately is that a chief executive officer in any organization in which they're doing that job, you sit at the top of the organization. Sometimes you share that senior position with other colleagues, like you might have a COO, which is a chief operating officer, or a CFO, which is a chief finance officer. But your job essentially is to look after the health and the well-being of the business and to keep driving the organization forward. Our organization is a limited we're a company registered with Companies House, but we're also a charity. And so we have lots of governance around the fact that we're a charity. And so I have to wear two different hats. So I have to make sure that I am operating within the laws of England and Wales in terms of what it means to be a business and a company, but also that we're satisfying the Charity Commission all the time in our charitable purpose. So I work with a team of brilliant people who all do the detail of things, and my job is to kind of sit across everybody and make sure that everybody else is delivering what they need to deliver in order for us to be a really healthy and happy organisation. And so a lot of my role is about human beings and about supporting human beings to be the best that they can be and bring their full self into their role. And sometimes I joke that I'm my job is to be kind of the bits and pieces person, and I'm not really super skilled at any one thing. It's my job to kind of bring all of the best people together and kind of let them into the space and let them do their jobs as well as they possibly can. So yeah, that's what I do.
Amazing. Thank you for sharing that, because it's so fascinating, I think, for many of us who we're familiar with orchestras and ensembles, etc. And then we see people playing, right? But very rarely, I think, we often think about actually what does it take to get people on to the stage in the first place, right? So like illuminating that a little bit, I think is really, really interesting. Could you just explain to us like what actually happens behind the scenes? Like, so okay, you're in charge of everything, but like, what does that mean, like day to day for you?
Gosh, okay, so so today, for instance, I'll just give you what my today looks like. My today has started with a bit of a surprise. So we are the resident orchestra every summer at Opera Holland Park, which means that we play the full season for 3 months of the garden opera season in Holland Park. This morning has started with the fact that our principal oboe player is very unwell, and so we need to find a principal oboe player who can play principal, so that means leading that whole section, who knows how to play Tosca, because that's the opera that's on, and is available tomorrow night. And so once you've kind of narrowed that down, it's quite a small pool. So my lap this morning, have somebody in the organisation whose job is to fix all of the different players into a project, and so I have to support her. I have to take some things off her to-do list today so that she could just drop everything and concentrate on finding an oboe player for us. So that was an unexpected start to my morning. What else I'm doing today? We've got a board meeting tomorrow. So again, we're a charity, but also a company. So we're governed by a board of trustees. So we're going to sit down for 3 hours tomorrow at our Q1 board meeting, which also involves doing all of the financial reporting on the year end of last financial year. So I want to reread all of those board reports. I've got the draft statutory accounts, so I need to turn up to the meeting tomorrow really having those figures in my head so I can discuss those with our board. We are just signing off on our ops plan for the year, so that's like all of our what our year looks like. So all of the programming, all the creative ideas, all of the different conversations we're having with different people, whether that's about touring and taking our work outside of London, or whether maybe it's taking it internationally. But that's also looking at the things that we use to make sure that we're doing our best work. So the data that we want to capture throughout a year that says, right, we played to 1,000 audience members, or we took our work to 72 different venues, or whatever that is. So that's a really important plan for our year. So we're just finishing all of that. And then there's just the day-to-day stuff of sort of running an organisation, and then there's the whole orchestra side of things. So I think off stage, we're an orchestra where all of our players work for us, but they also work for other orchestras. And that means that our players can be really flexible, but it also means that we don't always have exactly the same players in every concert. So each concert has its own unique identity, and that brings about some real opportunities in the stories that we can tell, but also some challenges as well, because every time we're putting together a project, we're having also to put the players together. And I think that's part of our uniqueness. But it also means that every time you see a project on the stage, the amount of work that's gone into that, putting it all together, the rehearsals, choosing the repertoire, so the repertoire is the music that we're going to play. And we spent hours, myself, our leader, Alex, who's our principal violinist. She's incredible. She also plays with the Aurora Orchestra. And we also have a group of artistic associates who we meet regularly to kind of throw ideas around. And I always invite challenge. I'm really interested in what other people have to say and challenge me and question our ideas, because it makes us healthier and better to have more voices in that mix. So all of that stuff goes into every single concert, because a concert isn't just a concert, it's a story, and it's an evening about opening things up and sharing things, and we want audiences to leave with something in their brain that they're feeling and thinking and responding to. So we're going to announce our autumn season next year. Next week we are announcing our autumn season for the end of this year, and we're just leading 3 concerts. Those 3 concerts have taken 8 months to plan, because that's the level of detail and planning that goes into it all. So yeah, it's a really delicate thing, I suppose, whilst also trying to kind of keep the business on track as well. So, but it's loads of fun. It is loads of fun. Sorry, that was a very long answer. I'm aware of that. But it's like, as you can see from the answer, there's so many little bits that's about the day-to-day thing, but it's also about trying to explode the creativity and really explore it.
Yeah, it sounds like, as well as having to think about so many different things, that there's a lot of different skills that you need to be able to do a job like that, right? So again, I think, for many young people who are thinking about going into a career in music, and we often think, all right, that means I need to be the best player in the world, right? It's like, yeah, sure, but even the best players of the world need to have certain other skills to go alongside their playing, right? Whether it's like, just general admins, like emailing and stuff like that, right? And just sorting out your finances, like you have to do that too, but not just for one person, but for the whole orchestra, or at least helping alongside your CFO. So yeah, I'm curious to know if there are young people out there who are listening and thinking, you know what, I think I could do this CEO thing. I think I could be a really good manager of a lot of people, of some really interesting creative folks. What kind of skills do you think they might need to learn to be able to do a job like this?
Well, firstly, let me just tell you that I'm a terrible viola player. So the idea that you need to be excellent at an instrument in order to work in any area of music isn't necessarily the case. I think the real skills are to know who you are as a person, leadership, and being at the top of an organization in any way, in any sector, working in any job. You have to have a really strong sense of self and what you believe in. So what we might call your value system. What are the things that you think matter to you? But you also need to know how to be able to tell the difference between what you care about and what's important for a larger organization. So for instance, I might I'm going to use a really sort of small example just to try and explain this. I might not like a piece of music. I don't like it. It doesn't suit my ear or my taste. But Alex might say, but this is the piece of music we need in order to tell the story within this concert in the evening. And so in that moment, I have to recognize that me not liking that piece of music doesn't matter. What's important is that we, as an organization, the players on the stage, can tell the story. So I say, yes, okay, let's play that piece of music. And you can take that idea and you can put it into every part of an organization, in terms of, we might not be talking about music choices, we might be talking about the way someone does something. We all work in different ways. I think compassion and kindness are absolutely key to it, because you will have some days where you just want to, you know, shout and you can't, because that's not leadership, that's just frustration. And I think also it really helps to be able to define why you think what you're doing matters. I don't think there are not many people who work in the arts because it's just a job. You'll hear this phrase a lot, that working in the arts is a vocation. And it's sort of a really important thing to understand. So the word vocation literally means a calling. So it means that you're sort of called to do something. It's not just a job, it's sort of something inside you that says, this is what I have to do. And it's going to really help if you truly believe in what you're doing. So I believe, I genuinely believe culture makes us a better and stronger society. I believe that medicine and science is the thing that kind of gets people well. But I think that arts and culture and music and dance are the things that heal people. And so whilst sort of culture isn't necessarily the primary fix, it's definitely part of the things that we put around ourselves and the people that we love, in order to keep ourselves healthy and well. And I just fundamentally believe that. But I also am always willing to change and to see opportunities. And, you know, I'm so aware, for instance, that the next generation, you guys, of people coming up in the world, you are so much smarter on technology, on communications, on social media, on branding, on all sorts of things that my generation, but we're like, gosh, well, I suppose I could put it on social media. And we start to sound like our parents did when they told us that, you know, they were going to the disco, and we all went, oh gosh, no, that sounds terribly old-fashioned. I know that we sound terribly old-fashioned to you now, and we need you in the workforce. We need you to come in with your new ideas and your challenges and your different ways of doing things to align, to keep us healthy and to keep us changing. So, and really aware of who you are and why what you're doing matters to you. That's what it takes, I think.
I love that. I really love that. And I'm sitting here, you know, thinking about, you know, for myself, and thinking, yeah, you know, do I know my values? Do I know myself? Am I aware of, you know, the ways in which sometimes I might interact with people and think, actually, this is how I would do it, but what's best for what we're doing right now? I think that's a really, it's a really, I think I encourage you all listening and watching to really think about that when you're working with people, especially when you're working with people, thinking about what's better for you versus what's better for what you're all trying to do. I think in
it's
that,
not always easy. It's really not always easy, but it's a really good check-in thing to have.
Yeah, absolutely. So moving on from that, I want to know what, because, you know, orchestras are different. And I think many people might think, okay, one orchestra is exactly the same as the other, you know, similar instruments, similar styles of music. So what makes your orchestra different from other orchestras?
People. I mean, that's that is the difference between orchestras, is the people. And I said earlier that our players play in different orchestras, but they don't all play in the same other orchestra. They move around. So we've got players who play for the BBC, for Aurora, for the RPO, that's the Royal Philharmonic Orchestra, for the Philharmonia, for the Liverpool Symphony Orchestra, the to Birmingham Symphony Orchestra. You know, there's people move around, and because they move around, they learn different things. They work with so many different people, and they bring all of those experiences back into the room when we all sit together. And so our orchestra's coming up to being 55 years old. We were set up by a man called Richard Hickox, and he was a conductor. And when Richard set up this orchestra, he was sort of seen as a bit of a maverick, and he was doing things differently, and he wanted to challenge what he saw as the sort of establishment or the status quo. And so he brought together this band of musicians who all kind of really bought into that idea, and that he thought were different and that were playing differently. You know, our players smile when they play, for instance, and that might seem like a very strange thing to say, but actually it's quite radical. A lot of the time you'll go and see an orchestra and they're just playing, they're not really giving any of themselves away as individual human beings. So one of the things that I encourage is individuality, which again is not necessarily something that's always encouraged in the orchestral world, because the idea of an orchestra is that you all play the exact right note at the exact right second, so that the whole sounds complete. So trying to add personality into that's what the conductor does, and the conductor leads that process. So asking a player sometimes to bring their own personality into something can feel a little bit exposing, and feel like it goes against what an orchestra is meant to do. And my background is not in classical music or orchestras. I worked in theatre and in festivals and in live events for my entire career before this job. And so I'm all about storytelling. I'm all about people. I'm all about meeting an audience. And so for me, breaking down the kind of, I'm not afraid to kind of break down the establishment and say, actually, I think there's another way of doing this, and I think it could be so much more interesting for our audience if we try and have a conversation with them, as opposed to just sitting on the stage and playing and that's it. So I think it's not necessarily unique to us. There are lots of individuals and orchestras who are doing all sorts of brilliant work. But I think the thing that I feel is our USP, or the thing that I really lean on, is this idea that we are a group of brilliant individuals who come together to make a harmony, well, sometimes a discordant harmony on purpose, but to make something together. And that's the thing that makes us unique, because it is only those people in that moment in that room who can make that sound together in that way. So yeah, I think that's probably it.
Thank you. I think that's given me, and hopefully everyone else, is that idea of thinking, what is it? How can you bring your own personality into, I think it's easier sometimes for us to think about it, doing it in maybe jazz music or pop music, where you can add your own riffs, you can improvise, you can do this, you can do that. But playing with other people in an orchestra setting, in like classical music, how do you do that? And I think that's something really that many of us can think about and think, well, actually you can. But then it's the communication about how you do that with other people. And then, again, this is what I want to do, but what's best for everyone else in this moment.
Yeah, no, I think that's really key. And I think, well, you'll know this, Nate, as a musician yourself. Like, one of the things that is kind of is really scary is that moment where you're just asked to improvise something, and orchestral players don't improvise very often, because they have music, as I said earlier, you have that music and you play that music, and maybe a conductor might bring something out of that music in the particular way that they conduct, but it is, everything relatively, Mahler's Fifth always sounds like Mahler's Fifth, right? So it can be really scary, and it makes people very vulnerable. And so one of the things that I also have to be very aware of is not asking players to do things that make them really uncomfortable, or make them feel like they don't have a support system. So one of the things, for instance, that I'm trying to bring more into our work is spending more time in rehearsals, because, as lots of you will know, when you're an orchestral player, you're brilliant, right? So you turn up knowing how to play the music. And that means that you don't have lots of time in rehearsal to sort of play and try things out. And to my mind, that sort of means that what we're doing is we're removing that sense of fun and joy from the process, because it's all about delivering the right notes. So there might be people who really want to do it. There might be people who don't want to do it so much. But to your point about what do I want versus what's the need, what's the greater good, I think my job is to offer the space where those things can be explored, so that no one is being pushed aside. So someone who wants to try something has the time to do it, and someone who wants to do it the way they've always done it still has that opportunity. And it's about finding that balance.
I think this would be a great place to ask if you have any advice for anyone watching, anyone listening who is thinking about getting into management or have never really thought about it before until they've met you. And like, oh, actually, it could be really interesting. Yes, did you have any words of advice, encouragement, things to look out for anyone who's thinking now, actually, this sounds like a really, really cool job?
Yeah, I think so my first thing to say would be to do the steps. So I learn everything I know I've learned because I worked for people who were 10 years, 15 years, 20 years ahead of me. And I didn't, when I was first starting out, I wanted to be there, or I wanted to be there. And that's the natural kind of impetus of being young and of being hungry for something and of being smart, and you just want to kind of run. And so what I would encourage you to do is to walk, and to listen, and to find people that you think might hold your values, and ask people, like, what's the worst. Now, I know that people can be very mean and very rude, and so I'm not getting into that, but professionally, or within the world, say, of being at school and talking to a teacher, or the worst thing really, if you approach someone respectfully and say, please could I have half an hour of your time to talk to you about what you do, the worst thing that they can ever say is no.
Mm-hmm.
And hearing the word no is a really important thing to learn for your professional life, because you will hear it and you have to expect it and you have to know how to deal with it. And so someone saying no to you doesn't mean that they don't value you or think that you're going to be good. It just means that maybe they don't have the time, and that's okay. And you learn from that. But also, for every one person that's going to say no, two people are going to say yes. They're going to say, yes, of course. Or they're going to say, I can't sit down with you and talk to you about what I do for a job, but because I don't have the time. But someone else in my organisation does have a bit more time. And also, we're doing a rehearsal. So would you like to come and watch that rehearsal and meet our orchestra manager? Or people are really generous, especially if you make the first move and say, this is something I'm interested in. I think the other advice is, don't pretend you know stuff that you don't know. It's okay to be completely naive. It's okay to say, gosh, I really like music, and I think I really like being in charge. That's a completely legitimate thing to say, by the way. I'd say that to all of you. I would say that particularly to anybody who feels like maybe that's not something in their lives that has ever been brought out of themselves before. Being in charge, it's okay to say that out loud. I like being in charge. I'm good at it. That's okay. I'm not bragging. It's just what I'm good at. It's a skill, being in charge. It's not, I think this is really important, actually. Being a chief exec, it's not a title like getting an honor from the palace or something like that. It's not honorary. It's actually a job to be in charge. And I think, obviously, those of us who watch football and we see the brilliant managers of both the Lionesses and the England men's team, we can see that because they talk about what that means to be in charge. So sorry, that was a bit of a tangent, but it's really important to know that being in charge is a job. It's not just a position. But that takes me back to, you learn how to be in charge by not being in charge. You learn how to be in charge by being managed by other people and taking things from them and saying, well, maybe I wouldn't have done that way, so I'm going to put that in my brain and remember that if I ever come back across that problem when I am in charge, I'm going to deal with it differently. And I'm never going to lie about what I know or what I don't know. I'm just going to say, I don't understand. I spend so much time, especially with my colleagues, who they're not in charge. They might be technically less powerful than I am in the company, but my goodness, they know a lot more than I do about certain things. And so for me, I have to have humility to say, I don't understand. Please, can you explain that to me? That's really important. But I think really it's about going out, watching things, finding out what you love. Because if you don't love something, it's going to be really hard to represent it. I don't love contemporary dance. I watch it. I respect it. I know it's an extraordinary skill. I have friends who do it, but it's not my passion. And I know that I would find it hard to advocate for it in the way that I can advocate for theatre or I can advocate for music. So asking people for their time, having some humility. Don't ever pretend you know something that you don't know. Don't be afraid to say, please, could you explain that to me? And take your time. Careful what you wish for. Someone once told me, you've got enough time to spend in a boardroom. Don't wish yourself there until you have to. That's a really important point. Enjoy being junior, because it's hard work the further up you get. I promise you.
Totally. Thank you so much for all the insights and all the stories as well, and for sharing your experience. It's not often, get to speak to people in your position and people who have earned the right to be in your position as well, right? And who are doing their jobs really well. So thank you for your time. I'm going to ask you one last question.
There you go.
If you could go to dinner with three people, past or present, who would they? They don't have to be musicians. Who would they be? And brief answer why.
Oh, do you know what? This is something that always comes up, kind of when you've sort of sat around with mates, and I feel like I've got really good answers, and now they've all gone. Willie Russell. So Willie Russell was a film director, and he made genius films. And he made my favourite film of all time, which is a film called Some Like It Hot, which stars Marilyn Monroe. And it's a gangster movie, but it's also a movie about love, and it's funny, and it's just brilliant. It's about Chicago, and it's in black and white, and it's just the best movie ever. So I would like to spend time listening to him. Who else? I think very much like to spend some time with people that aren't necessarily famous, but are just people that I feel like I could learn something from. And there's no point saying their names because they're not going to land. But I think kind of just that, again, what I was saying earlier about knowing who's sort of 10 or 15 years ahead of you in a situation, and just being able to spend some time with them that wasn't in a work situation and just look at how people operate. I think Mo Mowlam, again, that's not necessarily, Mo Mowlam is very well known. She was an MP. She has died, but she was absolutely essential in the government and in the peace agreement in Northern Ireland, which happened in the 90s, the Good Friday Agreement, which brought peace to the island of Ireland, which of course is a divided country. And I think the way she operated as an MP, but also as a woman in at that point in a kind of job that there weren't very many women in at all. There weren't very many women senior in politics. and everything that she had to deal with, I just think was absolutely incredible. And then okay, I'm going off piste here. I think probably my final person to have around my dinner table would be the Cookie Monster, because I can't imagine anything more entertaining than trying to eat with the Cookie Monster. And the idea of having Mo Mowlam, Willie Russell, and the Cookie Monster together, I don't know what I'm making at this point. I think I'm just making cookies. That's what's going to happen. Dinner is cookies.
Cookies, yeah.
And yeah, and milk. That's all. Cookies and milk for dinner. But I think, yeah, that's so people I admire, people I would like to learn from, but also people who make me laugh.
Yeah, absolutely. I love it. Thank you so much for your time. We really appreciate it. And I'm sure
I'm so sorry I couldn't be with you in person. And that we're having
the life of
to
the
record
CEO.
this. Yeah, exactly. That's basically it. But any questions that come out of this session, or anything that you want to ask me about or follow up with via Nate, I'm just so happy to do that. So please do let me know. And yeah, and I wish you all the very, very best.
Amazing. Thank you.
Thanks so much.